Hello everyone! This is a video about the Neapolitan sixth chord. Let's begin by listening to this example from Schubert's song cycle, Die schöne Müllerin.
Wo ein treues Herz in Liebe vergeht, da welken die Lilien auf jedem Beet.
Did you hear that striking major sounding chord in measure 8? It sounds dark and almost out of place. Why do you think that is? Let's explore this chord a little more. Take a second to pause the video and contemplate the jazz chords that would accompany this score. Note that the G and D in the bass line of measures 4 and 5 are pedal tones, and they won't help you find a jazz chord. Focus on the melody and the treble in the piano here. Here are the jazz chords you should have come up with for this excerpt. Now take a second to consider the Roman numerals. Consider carefully how you may label that A-flat major jazz chord in measure 8. The Roman numerals are fairly straightforward until we get to measure 8. What did you label this chord as? This chord is a flat major 2 chord in first inversion, or the Neapolitan sixth chord. Here we can use the labels of flat 2 and N6 interchangeably, just like our secondary dominant labels, as long as we're consistent throughout our analysis. So what are the characteristics of the Neapolitan sixth chord that give it that striking dark sound? In minor, it's a major triad built on lowered scale degree 2. Typically, it can be found in first inversion, but it can also be found in root position in the literature as well. The Neapolitan functions as a chromatically altered predominant chord with the goal of 5 or 5/7. In other words, it functions just like 2, but with more spice in the diatonic version. This means then, if it functions just like 2, that any chord that leads to 2 can also lead to our Neapolitan. Now it's your turn. Pause the video and take out a piece of staff paper. Spell the Neapolitan sixth chord of D minor in 4 voices. You should have spelled E flat, G, B flat. Don't worry if your doubling is different than mine. We'll talk about it next in voice leading of the Neapolitan sixth chord. Having built our chord on the lowered scale degree 2 leaves us with some requirements when it comes to voice leading. Flat scale degree 2, or Ra in solfege, is a tendency tone that wants to resolve down to scale degree 1. If you're moving directly to 5 from flat 2, the voice with scale degree 2, or Ra, should always resolve down to sharp scale degree 7, or T. Moving to natural 2 would go against this downward tendency and may not be as convincing in part writing. Occasionally you'll pass through cadential 6/4, making the voice leading Ra, Do, Ti for even smoother voice leading. It's important to note that the third of the chord has been doubled in this part writing example. It's best to double tones that have not been altered whenever possible. In other words, it's, in this case, best to double Fa, or the third of the chord. In addition, lowered scale degree 2, or Ra, is a tendency tone, just like our leading tone. It should not be doubled whenever possible. Now it's your turn. Pause the video and take the Neapolitan sixth chord that you've already written down in D minor and voice lead it to 5/7 and then to 1. Remember that flat scale degree 2 resolves down, and to avoid doubling altered and tendency tones whenever possible. Here's one solution. See how the E flat resolves down to C sharp, or Ra to T, and then Do? I've also not doubled any altered tones in my Neapolitan sixth chord. Let's sum up our discussion by listening to another example. Here's the beginning of this first movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Here are the jazz chords and Roman numerals. If we're in the key of C sharp minor, how do you spell a Neapolitan sixth chord? D natural, F sharp, and A. Let's pay careful attention to this D major triad here in the third measure. What chord approaches our Neapolitan sixth? Sixth chord. The sixth chord can approach a diatonic 2 chord, so it can also approach our Neapolitan. Is the chord functioning as a predominant with the goal of 5/7? Yes. The flat 2 chord moves directly to 5/7. What about doubling? Here we have Fa, or the third of the chord, doubled. How does the voice with lowered scale degree 2 resolve? Down to T, or sharp 7. So here we have flat 2 going to sharp 7 in our inner voice. In summary, the Neapolitan sixth chord is a major triad built on lowered scale degree 2. It functions as a predominant chord, just chromatically altered. The Neapolitan sixth chord contains tendency tones, which must resolve down. When part writing, avoid doubling chromatically altered tones, as well as tendency tones. That's it. Thanks for watching.